No, I don't practice any religion now. I pull from all of them really, and through my research, because I do a lot of research in ancient history, I pretty much dissect what probably is from source, and then take out what's probably man-made. Because there's a lot of man-made stuff. To think that, first of all, when I say man-made, I'm talking literally, right? With the patriarchy, and then just to think that humans didn't want to exert their own control in order to sway the public opinion over thousands of years because it's a religion that's pure. That doesn't make any sense. If you look at almost every religion in the world, that especially in the day and age not too long ago, where religion pretty much ruled the state and the countries, that the power was so involved in religion that the ones that were at the head wanted to be able to manipulate the public in order to follow them more. When it came to King Henry VIII breaking away from the Catholic Church because of his reasons, right? Whether something beneficial came out of it later or not, his intent was in order to be able to do what he wanted to do. When it came to having to pay penance in order to basically go to God, but now we realize that it's more of a personal relationship with God rather than having to pay money to an institution in order to get to that level, right? So there are many truths in there, and if you look at it from a logical perspective and from a non-triggered perspective and a non-judgmental one, you can immediately pull from there what you think is the truth and what is probably been added by humans. And not only that, it's actually out there what has been added. You can even find out the years it was added. You can even look up King James Bible editions, years. It will give you the person who wrote it, when they wrote it, what they put in. Even the crucifixion story, there's like 2 verses in there that wasn't even there until like 1,000 years after it happened.
Hey yo, welcome to the Godcast.
The Lord told me to tell you, wake up, wake up, wake up.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth!
Was there an awakening moment?
So this is like an all-encompassing awakening.
It's all-encompassing.
Every day, as they would creep in, I would just have to stop and catch myself right in those moments and say, God, I trust you. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm giving you my fear.
And I also came to the understanding of what you're saying, what you can't have light without dark. But then I started having the thought of, well, if we didn't have nighttime and we didn't have the winter, then plants would never stop growing. So if we never had issues, then we would only grow more. The thing with me, I never got into the astrology stuff. I never got into really doing any kind of energy work until I was very firm with Jesus. And it's a thing with me and Jesus where like people are praying and I'll get the sudden urge to tell that person to give your burdens to Jesus, and they'll say like, oh, I was just trying to talk to Jesus.
Welcome to Godcast,
the Goodness Over Darkness podcast.
Here's your host, Emmanuel Kingman.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Godcast, the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuel Kingman, and here with me for the intro and the interview is the wonderful, lovely Mimi.
Hello.
Hello, my love. So, on today's episode, we had on special guest Neil Gaur, and Neil is host of Portal To Ascension, and wow, did he bring it in this episode. We got a lot of information out of Neil. We talked about Jesus being where he was between the ages of 13 to 29. We talked about the difference of not the differences, but we talked about the similarities of Hinduism and Christianity and how they're very, very similar. He told us about Pythagoras having a lot of the same qualities as Jesus, and we got to a lot of different things. I mean, he had some great grounding techniques at the end where, you know, I want to let you guys listen to it. I don't want to give it all away here, but this was such an informative episode. And you see Mimi is busy writing away.
In my brain. Hold on.
Yeah, she is. She was not. She was taking a lot of notes because there was a lot of information here that was being said to us that was very eye-opening, and Neil did it in such a great way, like cutting through all the red tape, essentially, that all the divisionist tactics that have been used, and he knows his stuff. I mean, when we were talking about ancient civilizations, he was naming a lot of things off that I haven't heard elsewhere, and I looked into this stuff fairly decently. I like to look into many different ways and understand things from many different points of view, and he brought a lot of stuff that I haven't heard before. So, this was very, very eye-opening for me, and
Yeah.
well, I want you to get involved in the intro here.
Sorry.
We had to do it quick because you're leaving in a minute.
Yes, I am.
So what was your take on Neil in general? With him bringing forth all this information, did it open your eyes in any way?
No, it just kind of confirmed a lot of things for me that I've kept within myself. So that was good.
Okay.
I like when that happens. I like when thoughts that I've always had, or new thoughts even, are verified, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's the portal to ascension, right? So it was like this was a coming together, and especially where I've been in my journey recently is don't divide, don't try to separate yourself from others, try to find common ground. The one phrase that keeps popping up to me is, do you find solidarity within your differences, or do you find division within your similarities?
Mhm.
And that's a perspective thing. And I think with Neil, we were both looking to find solidarity in our own sense, not necessarily on this conversation. That happened as a byproduct of trying to do what God wants us both to do in our own way. And I mean, I learned a lot of different stuff about how Hinduism, when we look at different pastors and people in Christianity that point to certain aspects, and they'll say, look, that's evil because of this. And Neil brought it back to the beginning. Well, it was changed because of people, but the way that it started was in a divine sense. And that was really helpful for me because, I think that I don't want to say Christians are doing bad things or pastors are doing the wrong thing, but they're really
There's
trying to,
never any ultimates. Yeah.
they're trying to scare people into thinking like them, and they do it, and it's not that they're doing it purposely to scare people. I don't think. I just think that they may be scared for whatever reason, and they say like karma. They bring up that question of, well, what's with the untouchables? And I talked to somebody else last night, and I asked him his opinion on that, which I'm going to try to get him on the podcast in a few weeks here. But it's the same thing. He had a similar idea that it's not a good thing, and Neil actually taught us where that comes from, and it's white supremacy. Again, in our history of that happening. So it seems like to me that history and all of creation is really fractals, and it's smaller and larger events that are repeating themselves. And to me, I think maybe Jesus is the one for everybody, that it's not just for certain locations, that it works for everyone everywhere. And no matter what it is, I think he is the main character of everybody. But I think that you don't have to say his name in order for it to work. I think he is just the one for all the black sheep. And I think that everybody here essentially is the black sheep, and he's going to reach us where we are. Come as you are, right? That's the saying in Christianity, but they don't really practice it all that much. They want to tell you, no, leave that there and come to me. And when Jesus says, no, come to me, I'll show you grace wherever you are, and I will walk you through whatever your decision making process is. I'll walk you through all your thoughts and your actions, and I'll help you become someone who is worthy of making it to heaven. Because, and I don't want to say people aren't worthy of making it to heaven, but it's, we have to let go of certain aspects of ourselves in order to ascend. We are actually held onto these attachments that keep us in these denser realms, whereas we have to realize that we're the ones doing it, and when we make decisions, we let it go. We let the negative go. We transmute it. We don't play around in the karma anymore. It keeps coming
Right.
around, and we do the same thing.
I feel like the only way, quote unquote, out is growth. You
Yeah.
have to grow. And if
Yeah.
you don't grow, then you're just gonna, you're just gonna not grow. You're just gonna still be, quote unquote, in.
Yeah. This is like a testing ground or a battleground, a school.
Definitely a school.
Yeah, where we have to learn how to become. We have to have the discernment of God. We can't just.
This is the mystery school, the my story school.
Hmm.
hmm
Very interesting.
I had a lot on that last night, and on Facebook with some people. Not that I had an argument, but I had a back and forth a little bit with someone about history, and they were trying to tell me how important it was to learn and be taught history in school, and it's there for us to learn from, and to be able to know things that have happened. And then I had my little comeback of, how do you know that these things actually happened? Is it just because you're
Mm,
being told they happened? You cannot know something unless you experience something. So there is a history, his story versus mystery, my story in my life anyway.
wow. That's some deep stuff there. I mean, man, you're not one that would typically do that on
No,
social
and it
media.
was it's a family member, but and it wasn't anything um mean or anything like that. It was just, this is my viewpoint and this is your viewpoint on this one thing.
Wow. Very interesting stuff. Yeah, I love how you put that, because history is his story. It's the story
hmm
of the victor. And it seems that, I'm obviously white. I've gotten my ancestry, uh, whatever it's called, ancestry in me or whatever.
hmm
And I'm white all across the board. I'm a little bit of Mediterranean as well. And for some reason, it didn't say that I'm Native American at all, but my father knows that his great grandfather was Native American. So, there's something to that where maybe uh, that doesn't show up for whatever reason. They keep that from us. I'm
Yeah, I've
part of.
never tested mine. I don't think I would want to.
Yeah, I was part of a Native American Indigenous church that I joined a few years ago, and they told me that, yeah, it's often happens where people get their DNA taken and that's withheld from them. And it also could have been that was just my mitochondrial DNA, or I don't even know if that's the proper word, but it would be my mother's side is what I got tested instead of my father's side. So I don't know how.
I don't know how that all works, what the
Yeah,
science behind testing your blood is to figure out where you're from, and
right.
it's
That's all
that's all
weird.
a mystery to me too.
Yes, but anyway, I say that because it's white people that have been doing the stuff that isn't up to snuff. So, and I'm all white, so it would be my history is part of that. So I think the fallen angels were white, super white. Actually, I think they were like the color marble, and I think that at some point that maybe everything was flash frozen and then, or was heated up real quick and then frozen real quick, and that the marble statues that we see could be the actual beings. Not all the marble statues, but some of them from Greek could be that they were the actual Greek gods, the fallen angels that were heated up and then frozen, and then they were locked in as rock. And that's why we have the marble is like the most divine uh, rock that you can use now. The whiter it is, it's always that way for some reason. And if we had a voidless or a colorless void, a a black
Hmm.
sea, that what would be the opposite of that would be
Granite
very white. I don't
would
know.
be the opposite of marble, technically. Is
Well,
it?
no, I don't mean rock. I mean if we if we have.
Just what you were saying made me think of the guidestones and the granite capital and the opposite of white.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so I'm just saying, like a black background.
hmm
What would you put on that? You would put what would show up, right? So if God created the angels before he created the earth, and it was a void, it was black, then he would create them. They would be the opposite,
light,
white.
right.
So they would be very white to us. And Neil in here talks about cream-colored people coming from North Russia, where St. Petersburg.
That was interesting.
Yeah, St. Peter's Gate, St.
Yes.
Petersburg coming down, and they started mixing with the darker colored people,
Right.
and that's where the untouchables came from, a white supremacist type of thing.
There's an interesting fallen angels take for me.
Yeah.
That they maybe have fell technically or went south from Russia.
Yeah, Anunnaki Dan and Anunnaki Dan and Andy Rouse talk about that in the Box Saga often. I don't know why my mic keeps being muted by StreamYard here and switching where my mic is. I don't know
Depends
what's
on
happening.
what we're on to when we're speaking, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's been happening a lot lately, so it's just a pain. It happened a few times during the episode as well. So I'm not going to be able to edit it out because I didn't write down the times, but you guys will hear it. It's only a few seconds of silence. So anyway, I think that'll do it for this intro. Make sure you check out all of Neil's stuff on YouTube, Portal to Ascension. I'll have the link in the description. I really want you guys to go over there and check out all his stuff because he does a lot of great work. Every day he's putting something out now. He said, for a while now he's been doing that. So I really want you guys to check that out. Make sure you check out my website, emmanuelkingman.com. And you can hit me up for a spiritual baptism. You can hit me up for the mentorship program. You can hit me up just to have some phone conversations and guidance, where it is a mentorship program, but it's without being spiritually baptized. It's just talking, because I've been through a lot of difficult things in life, a lot of challenging situations, and I've improved from them. So I know different techniques and different ways, and I can understand you where you are in your journey, and I can help you get out of it in a logical,
And if you
reasonable
need me
sense.
there, I'm here for you.
Yeah, Mimi is also available as
I
well.
have been asked to be present, once or twice now. So that's been very good for me, actually.
Yeah, and you guys can email me if anyone wants to, just talk to Mimi and not me. Email me and I'll get it to her, and we'll get you guys in touch. So I think that's going to do it. Make sure you stay tuned after the bridge for our wonderful interview with Neil. And without further ado, here is Neil Gaur.
Welcome to the Godcast. Cross up on my back, I'm slaying demons. It don't matter what you call that. Searching for the truth, facts are facts until they fall flat. It's looking like a story, man, it's all cap. But it's goodness over darkness, it ain't all bad. I'm at my maker, but I was called back. Emmanuel, show my people they're under a spell. Heaven or hell is free will. I made my choice and now it's well with my soul. I pray the same for you as well. Welcome to the Godcast. Welcome to the Godcast.
Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on a guest who has deeply researched religion, spirituality, and conspiracies for several decades. He is a rapper, a YouTube podcast host, and also has a platform that is helping reach the masses. He is host of the Portal to Ascension. Everybody welcome Neil Gaur to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Thank you. So good to be with you.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. I have been a fan of the Portal to Ascension since I woke up.
Nice.
I came across that. You and Justin DeChamps were like one of the first two people that I found, and I was like, wow, this is some incredible stuff. So it's an honor to have you on the show.
Dude, I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah. So do you want to give our audience a little bit of background about who you are?
Yeah, for sure. So hello, everybody. My name is Neil, and I'm the founder of Portal to Ascension. And the way it all started is, well, whenever I give my story, I kind of give my full story because it's really about how I woke up and got into all this work in the first place. So I was born in England, in London, and I moved to the US when I was 12 years old. And I was born into a Hindu family. So my parents are from India. and raised in Hinduism. And pretty much I just followed the rites and rituals that my parents told me. They said, told me what to do, and I just did it. I went to temple at a very young age. I would be singing songs there. But then as I started growing older, I realized that I really didn't have any firm beliefs or identity within religion. Like, I was just doing what I was told to do. And as I started connecting with other first generation Indian kids born out of India, I realized it was kind of a consensus for most of us that so many of these, and a lot of them today still are like completely immersed in their religion, but just doing what their parents said without any belief or even thought about what God is or anything like that. So as I started having these thoughts and ideas of like, well, what is religion? Who am I? I was graduating high school at the same time in the year 2000. And when I went to college in Cal State Fullerton down in Southern California, I started, as a lot of people do when they go to college, connecting with many different people. I was already listening to a variety of music, but my music expanded on a whole other level, and started wondering and becoming curious of what is the root of all religion. Like, I was seeing all of this division in the world, and I was diving into a little bit of Christian text here and seeing all these other religions were saying that my way is the only way to God. And I was saying, that's like so interesting that all these religions have so many similar beliefs, but at the same time they're saying this is the only way. What if there are multiple ways? So the first question that came to me when I started all this at like age of 19 in 2001 was, what is the root of all religion? At the same time as I had that thought, I was writing spoken word poetry. And my spoken word poetry at that time, it was like more like science fiction. It was like black holes, this, extraterrestrials, interdimensional travel, all that kind of like scientific intellectual jargon that I was just thought I was making up. So I started looking up not only what I was writing on the internet, but also like exploring just like ancient civilizations. And then I came across 4 individuals that I've had the opportunity to work with, some of them more than others, that really was kind of like the awakening for me. And they were Jim Self, who speaks on simultaneous time and the Merkaba light body, and Nassim Haramein, who basically the bottom line of Nassim is he shows us through mathematics and science how we're all interconnected. Then William Henry, who's also a star on Ancient Aliens, and he's an investigative mythologist. And then Jordan Maxwell, who is huge in the occult wisdom, the bloodlines and secret societies and all that. So that was all like all at once. I started getting this info, and I started reading the Sumerian tablets of creation. Within the Sumerian tablets of creation, I started seeing all these stories that other religions in the world, including Islam, Hinduism, Jainism, Christianity, and beyond, had actually pulled from this original source text and changed the stories and put it in their own religions. So I was slowly getting towards the fact that there was a source code, there was some original text that everybody pulled from. But the smoking gun was that the text that they pulled from also spoke about another planet in our solar system, and that there were extraterrestrials that had visited our planet for quite some time. And a lot of the stories that were taken into other ancient texts, let's just talk about, for example, the Noah story, which comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the ancient Sumerian scripture. Basically, Gilgamesh was a hybrid extraterrestrial giant that lived on Earth. And Noah's story is the exact same story, but just taken out the ET component of it all. So to me, at this point, it became, well, either you can say all religion in the world is complete BS because it's all coming from this ancient text and they're just changing it up themselves, or maybe there is some sort of cosmic connection to our origins.
That's interesting. I think the word religion is a very tricky thing. I think it means more tradition than it does anything to do with spirituality, but we just put it in a context of spirituality. But, I could wash my clothes religiously. I could go play basketball religiously, so it's the way that they word things. It's all word magic, really. And they trick us with things. And it's interesting that you're saying, Gilgamesh was a giant. Could it be as above, so below, that on a larger dimensional scale it was a giant, and or it started with the Sumerians, and then lower dimensionally would be us, and that would be Noah happening simultaneously? I always think of those types of things, especially when we talk giants and the size of things, I think everything has gotten smaller for some reason.
Well, and then that goes into many other stories in which, like, you can talk about it metaphorically in like what you're speaking about right now, but then also there are, for example, the Paracas people in Peru, and it looks like, even if you look at the ancient Greek text, let's talk about that. That the giants were the first offspring. No, I'm sorry, the Nephilim were the first offspring of the fallen angels with the gods, and then the giants were the offsprings of the Nephilim with the humans, and then they continued to hybridize until they literally started looking like us. So
Yeah.
we went from, looking like giants, and then that's the whole connection to the bloodlines of the secret societies, that they
Yes.
think that they were connected to them originally, but now they walk the planet looking like you and I.
Yeah, and I have also come across this, and I get, quote unquote downloads and meditations and all, and that's what I really got, is that the people who run this realm are the relatives of the Nephilim, of the
Yeah.
giants, and they couldn't procreate together, so they had to keep hybridizing with humans in order to, and they would get them smaller and smaller, but that's the only way they could reproduce, and why they would have different families that they reproduce with, like famously, I think it's the Goldsmiths and the
Mhm.
Rothschilds. They always procreate together, and why that would be, is because they couldn't keep the family line going if they didn't do that.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, so very interesting stuff that you got here. So the Sumerian tablets. So let's get into that just a little bit. So uh, well, what's your opinion on how old the Earth is? Because I know the Sumerian tablets are about like 6,000 years. Am I
Yeah.
correct on that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you mean like, how old the actual planet has been around for? How long has it been around for?
Civilization. How long has civilization
Okay,
been
yes. So I feel that we go through cycles of time, cycles of consciousness. Time is not linear, and linearity is just a construct between the fact that we exist in certain place in relation to our sun, right? So if you even step outside of our planet in a spaceship, and you're now like maybe like a few inches closer to the sun than you were before, now you have your own concept of linear time. Literally, just because of the fact that we are where we are, linear time is what it is. But then in other dimensions, right, as we go higher in dimensions, time becomes more secular until we get to the point that all things exist at once. So ultimately, I feel that everything exists at the exact same moment. However, we exist within the third dimension, which is one dimension of space, two dimensions of time, and the two dimensions of time is beginning and end. And as
Very
we ascend, we go into, actually, I'm sorry, we're in the fourth dimension, because the fourth dimension, let me just take a step back here. 4 dimensions: length, width, and height. The fourth dimension is us being lodged within those 3 dimensions, right? So it's 2 dimensions of space, 2 dimensions of time, beginning and end. As we go to the fifth dimension, we're adding another point of time, beginning, middle, and end. Now we have a triangle, integration point. When we're in this reality, we have the duality, because we have the 2 polar opposites. So that's the whole concept of, the secular time component. So now getting back to what you said. So we have the linear time that we see and that we observe because we're within this construct of these dimensions. But then as we expand out, we start looking at ancient civilizations that were around for thousands of years, some of them, and also had some sort of cosmic knowledge, like the Maya, the Greek civilization, India, the Zoroastrians, and even the Kabbalistic text, Kemetic text, which is Egypt. And they talk about secular time, that time goes in cycles that follows the precession of the zodiacs, which is around 26,000 years. And within that, we have evolutions of consciousness and devolutions of consciousness, that we basically go to a higher state of awareness every 13,000 years, and then we take another 13,000 years to devolve. As we evolve, we start having full remembrance. Our bodies start operating on a whole other level. Parts of our brains that are dormant start activating. Our DNA strands, activate as well. There's a whole science behind that and evidence now about the multiple DNA strands that we do have. And but then as we devolve, those elements start, going offline. And the reason why they go offline is because we're in such a dense reality that the frequencies do not support that activation. So that goes hand in hand with not only us going up, in consciousness again, but also the position of our solar system within our galaxy also is really important, because I'm actually doing a presentation this weekend on this, showing the dynamics of the way our solar system rotates around our galaxy and the different places it goes. There's all types of various forms of cosmic radiation that bombards our planets in certain intervals, almost like in patterns, as we move around our galaxy. And the theory is that some of that cosmic radiation, as well as what's going on Earth here, actually supports us in remembering and having, activation of consciousness. So now to get back to the original question, which is, how old is civilization? I know I feel there's enough evidence out to show that we've had advanced societies here on Earth for at least the last 26,000 years. Okay, but they say great civilizations only really appeared around 8,000 years ago, and it looks like there are cataclysms that occur every now and then, almost as if a pattern. Sometimes it's every 6,000 years, but it seems every 13,000 years there's been something that happens on the Earth that almost resets and restarts a whole new civilization. And this isn't even fringe science. This is conventionally accepted, that even if you basically if you dug the same distance under the whole of the planet to go back around 13,000 years ago, there's this whole layer of solidified volcanic ash that basically shows that there was probably an asteroid that hit the planet around 13,000 years ago in the Younger Dryas, resetting civilization. Okay, so, and even though that happened, we are still finding evidence of structures that date back that far ago, right? That goes way beyond ancient Sumer, even though there was some sort of cataclysm. So my question is that if there was a great civilization 13,000 years before that, 26,000 years before that, and we're barely able to find and discover the evidence of the one that existed 13,000 years ago, right? That chances are there were other great civilizations that we've been going through this cycle for many, many times, but who knows what kind of cataclysms occurred and how it got buried, if everything was wiped from the planet. There's all types of prophecies that the planet was scorched with fire. So I think it goes back way, way farther. We're only starting to discover it now. I think you muted.
I don't know why my microphone just switched on me. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I think time is also cyclical, that it's not just linear, that there are different cycles that are going on over and over. It's really tough to say how old the Earth actually, or not the Earth, but civilization could be, because when we look at all the resets, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the covered up history with this quote unquote Tartaria stuff that's coming to fruition. So I think there was a bunch of resets and they put us back. So I think that happened many times. Now that really throws things off, because we could do archaeological digs that say 5 resets happened and they were each 200 years. So something could have happened in the quote unquote 1800s, but then archaeology would say it was 1,000 years ago, because it's a weird place where that's all at. And I think everything is just really thrown off, and we can't understand. We don't have the capacity, because everything has been messed with so much. We don't have the capacity to understand how everything actually operates.
Yeah, and the thing with archaeological digs and carbon dating is you can only carbon date organic matter, right? Mm-hmm. So if they're finding stone structures, you can pretty much say whatever about those. And if you find stone structures that are really, really old, and then you find a piece of papyrus in there, or a piece of a shipwreck that's wood, you can just say, oh, well, it's as old as this piece of thing that we found in there, but that doesn't mean that was the original person that was in there. Mm-hmm. And a great example is Egypt. Some people think that the Sphinx, for example, well, it's actually pretty much a given now through geological studies, and Robert Schoch, who we work with, came out with all of this, that the Sphinx is definitely at least 13,000 years old, which is around 11,000 BC. However, the main piece of evidence that we're looking at is the fact that the Sphinx was facing the constellation of Leo when Leo was the predominant, zodiac in the night sky. So Leo was actually also in the same exact position 26,000 years before 13,000 years ago.
Right.
So which makes some people think, like Billy Carson, he believes it's 36,000 years old, even older than that. So it's all really speculation at this point. Maybe one day we'll get some evidence that comes out, but it definitely goes back way further than we've been told.
Yeah, and I recently just saw, I don't know if it was a meme or something I came across that said, what if it's actually not supposed to be a lion, but it's actually the face of a man like Aquarius and the body of a lion like Leo, and it's just saying every 13,000 years, because on the astrological signs you have Leo on one side, Aquarius on the other, so it would always be that alternating thing, which is interesting. Which then maybe it doesn't go back 36,000 years, maybe it's only the 26,000 years. So it's a lot of interesting stuff that has been happening on this planet. So I wanted to get into a little bit of Jesus not in the Bible. His age 13 to 29, it's not in there, and people like to make assumptions as to what he was doing. As far as Christianity, they really try to ignore that part for whatever reason. For me, I'm a truth seeker. I really want to understand what was going on. I think that the Bible is a very special book, and it's numerology, it's literal, it's astrology, it's anatomical, it's so many different things all happening at once. If you change the spacing of the letters in Hebrew, then you can make whole new sentences that make it a completely different thing at times. So I really want to ask you, because I know that you've done all this type of research, what is going on with Jesus from the ages of 13 to 29?
Well, first, there's a few different, people that have come out with information on this, one of which you might have heard of, which is the Urantia book. Have you heard of this book?
Yes, I actually have that. And Justin Deschamps is the one that recommended it. Yeah.
He's big into it too. So that's pretty mind-blowing, right? That basically he spent some time in India, and he was a teacher to a child there, and probably spent some time with Buddhist monks as well. So during his last years, there's actually a book that was found in India about his last years as well, separate from the Urantia book. And they even had a name for him over there. So to me, it's pretty much a given that he had explored the world, maybe not just India, but if he was an enlightened being like, we believe him to be, to feel that he would just stay in one area and not want to explore the world and get, and not only teach the world his message, but also learn from the experiences that people are having, would kind of be ignorant. Why would he just want to basically stay in that one area when he has the opportunity to explore? Plus, the Silk Road in his day and age was actually in its heyday, right? So the connection from where he was to India wasn't a hard thing to basically do. Many, many people did it. Sages, prophets, there was a huge sharing of wisdom there. Even ancient Indian practices, for example, the rosary bead actually comes from the mala bead. So many of the traditions that Christians ended up using was actually, not founded in India, discovered there, but definitely was utilized in India as well. So I think that he was definitely over there, even so much so that if you look at Gnostic Christianity, right, Gnosticism, that pretty much everything that was before 325 AD, before Constantine came and did his thing and had the Council of Nicaea, it's almost like a combination of Buddhism and Christianity as we currently know it. And there was also the Book of Love. There was the Book of Reincarnation. His resurrection represented the reincarnated and the infinite soul. So many of these elements were then taken out from Constantine. So to me, there's more evidence to suggest that he definitely had connection to this other religion. That was one of the first things that really stood out to me too when I was waking up, is realizing the similarities from Christianity and to Hinduism, because I was born and raised in England, and I celebrated Christmas, and I had a belief in Jesus, but not religious belief, just knew he existed. I watched The King of Kings growing up as a Hindu kid, and we would watch like Jesus movies during Christmas and all that, and it was just common for me. But then if you look at but would a Christian do that for Hinduism? And the main reason they would not do that is because Christianity says that fundamental Christianity, that Jesus is the only way to be saved. Whereas Hinduism says in their Rig Veda, there are many pathways to the same destination. And that's a direct quote for why there are so many different spiritual traditions on the planet. Different traditions need to come from different people. Plus, the reason why many Hindus accept Christ as existing is because he's spoken about in their text as a prophet that was going to basically come down to earth again. Some Christians, fight against Hinduism and religions that came out of India because they think that they're monotheistic, and then monotheism has nothing to do with pagan religions. But what they don't realize is monotheism actually came from pagan religions, and there's a lot of similarities within those. That Hindu people would not even consider themselves pagan, because most Hindus, if they know the actual scriptures, would tell you that it's a monotheistic religion. There's only one God, and it's Brahman. Brahman is the universal consciousness of all that is. And then every other being is one of two things: a literal extraterrestrial fragmentation of source, or a metaphoric personification of that one being. That's their true original text from the Vedic knowledge. But then what happened over this devolution of consciousness, because Hinduism was around for like thousands of years, so as it devolved, it became very ritualistic. And as it became ritualistic, they started making and personifying all these beings as individual entities rather than what they really represented. So that was kind of the separation from it all. I feel that Buddha and also Jesus went and dissected the truths from it all and tried to resurrect the original information, which was, the basic messages. We're all interconnected. We're all one. And the number one message of all that definitely is in the East: the kingdom of heaven is within you,
Very interesting stuff. Yeah. So when I look at what was going on before Jesus was here, there was obviously something happening. And I don't think that everybody was just earthbound when they died. I don't think that, because when we say that Jesus created the way, I think he created the way for those who were lost. That was something they could latch onto. That he said, "I'm here for the sinners. I'm not here for the righteous. I'm here for those who are lost." And I think that there's a whole lot of different things that were going on. And like you said, with personifying things, I think that's what really has happened in Catholicism in a major way, in that these angels and saints that they're praying to, it's essentially the same idea. So I see Catholicism as really the Christian version of Hinduism in that sense. Like maybe I don't want to say modernized, but something to that effect, that they've kind of did it, and then they say, no, you guys are wrong because you use other words than us. And it's really the same thing. So I do have a question. I thought Vishnu was the creator god. I thought Krishna was the son of Vishnu. So obviously I'm wrong on that. Could you inform us on that a little bit?
Okay, so Brahman is source, all that is, the one God, right? Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. Brahman and Brahma are two different people, right?
Okay.
Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma are all the Trinity. Here we go again. Now we got the Trinity in Hinduism, okay? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. So they are actually incarnations of Brahman, which is the all-creating Father universe. Okay. Shiva was the only immortal one. So Vishnu and Brahma were actually able to, they had long lives, but they were able to be killed. So Shiva was so immortal that there was a poison that came down to earth, right? And this poison basically filled all the waters, and people were dying from it. And Shiva went and did his magic spell and basically sucked out all the poison from the waters. It was blue in color, and he drank it, and then he became blue. That's why he's blue. And so in Hindi, Sanskrit, the term for blue is Neil. My name, Neil, right? And the name for blue throat is Neil Kant. All right, Neil Kant. Kant is throat. My first name and middle name is Neil Kant. So my name is Shiva's name. But check this out. Neil Kant actually represents the poison was the influx of DMT into the waters. Okay, so this is how. So Neil Kant means blue throat, which actually means DMT. And then because he drank that, that's how his third eye opened and he became fully enlightened and created yoga and became the first yogi. That's the whole story of it all.
Wow. So that's how he became blue. Are you familiar with our ancient cultures not having blue except for the different parts of India and Egypt? And it's only like 200 and some years old. It's very strange.
Yeah, I know, man. Actually, I've done some research on that. And I want to put a whole presentation on that because it's some amazing information there.
Yeah, wow. Go ahead.
I was going to just, because you asked another question, I didn't finish. You said, is Krishna the son of Vishnu? No, Krishna is a reincarnation of Vishnu, okay? And Krishna was born to a virgin mother, was known as a carpenter, was called a savior by all of his people, right? Had a spear put in his side when he died, right? And there's another like 6 different things that are the exact same story as the Christ story, and they even have almost the same name, Krishna and Christ.
Yeah, okay. So with that, a lot of Christians will say that this was a mockery of what was to come. That they'll say that fallen angels essentially knew, or Satan knew the story of what was to come, and that they played this out because they didn't want to face punishment. So then they tried changing their way, and in doing that, they presented a false god as if he was God before God actually came down. What's your take on that? Do you think Jesus is not the creator, that Jesus is just an avatar, or that him and Krishna were essentially above the rest of us, and that they came down at different times for different reasons in different parts of the world?
Yeah, the latter part. I definitely think that there came down different times for different parts of the world, for different cultures that needed them. You know, you throw a Krishna with his, setting with his Indian culture into Jerusalem is probably not going to work out. And in India, there's been a lot of prophets. So since, they track their religion back for sure to at least around, let's say, the Vedic days of 5000 BC, right? That's like 6,000 years, and it was probably orally done for at least 2,000 to 3,000 years before that. So maybe because the Indus Valley civilization, there was oral tradition, and a lot of these scriptures come from there, and that existed at the same time as Mesopotamia and Sumer, right? So it'd been around for quite some time, and during that time, many prophets had come down to the earth, and the prophets would come down when humanity needed them the most. And if you study the cycles of time, which every ancient culture talks about, but ancient India actually happens to have a graph with the dates on it, you can see the different shifts in the ages and the cycles that we're going through, from the dark ages to whatever age. And at the end and beginning of every age, an avatar incarnates. And at the beginning of at the very close to the beginning of the Kali Yuga, which was the dark ages that we're in, we had all these incarnations from Pythagoras, because I'll tell you in a second how his story mirrors Jesus, and I have a graph here, so I'll go over it if you want me to. But to Jesus, to Buddha existing, to many other avatars that come down on the planet, and it's basically humanity's consciousness was at such a level that they needed an influx of awareness, and these beings come down in order to provide it to them. Some places more than others. India was really benefited off the fact that the Himalayas basically held them all in this one area without being able to be fully invaded for thousands of years. And because of that, they were protected from a lot of cycles of time and cataclysms and catastrophes and even invasions until technology increased to a level where they were able to do that. So their spirituality grew, but the spirituality grew so much that it became all these other religions. The amount of religions that came from Vedic text and Hinduism, I mean, probably hundreds. and all these different sects and gurus. You can go to Rishikesh and there'll be like 300 gurus there right now because they're all trying to sell you on their level of awareness. That India became, at one point, it was just a place to experience and to express spirituality in your own form, until it got to a point where it became commercialized in this capitalistic world, you know. But so what you were saying here is, what would I say to the people that are saying would say that, well, you know, it didn't happen in the right way. They try to freaking maybe mock it, or something happened that relates to the fact that it's maybe satanic, which also connects to the fact that a lot of people think paganism or polytheistic religions are satanic. I feel that it's not the case at all. I think that it could be argued, someone can have the same arguments when it comes to Christianity and Luciferianism and the connection there. What it looks like is that we just get what we need when we need it. And these beings come down to provide us with certain messages. And the message has never been, follow me, I am the only way. Even though that's what the quote seems to say in there. But Krishna said the exact same thing. He said, I am the light and I am the way. That's his words. Okay. So he didn't come down and say, my way is the only way and everybody else you should kill. Right. So yeah, so I'll just leave it at that for now, but you get where I'm going with this, right?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And I want to touch on the Pythagoras thing.
Yeah. You muted again.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know why my mic keeps on muting. This is it's getting annoying now. StreamYard keeps doing this to me. But anyway, so I want to get to the Pythagoras thing in a moment, but it's very interesting because, yeah, like you said, Jesus doesn't say he's the only way. He says, I am the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. But I've also had moments in me where I just feel that I'm like, oh, okay, I am a way. I am the way because I went from all the way in the darkness. You know, I was in prison, I was an addict, I had so many things that were so many bad attributes that I now can relate to so many different people, and I can show them like, look, I've created this path for you to essentially look at and mirror in your own way. So it's I really have a problem when people get offended by words and just the name, someone saying this name and that name, and they're saying, no, you're wrong because you're using that word. When you can feel God is going to, I feel that there is going to be some kind of final judgment for us. I don't know. I guess civilization will be recreated and they'll try again in whatever sense. But I feel that God will judge based on what's inside of us, what's in our heart and what's in our understanding in our mind. And is it that are we following something because we want to be lustful? Is it, are we giving ourselves over to something else, like to that thing that's going to hurt us and make us miss the mark? Or, sin means miss the mark. Or are we trying to be people who are doing good for the sake of doing good, not for the sake of benefiting ourselves later, but are we doing good because that's what God wants us to do, because we're all supposed to love each other and be one? What's your take on the different wordings? Do you find that, so are you do you still practice Hinduism now, and do you think that that is the only way?
No, I don't practice any religion now. I pull from all of them, really. And through my research, because I do a lot of research in ancient history, I pretty much dissect what probably is from source and then take out what's probably man-made. Because there's a lot of man-made stuff. To think that, first of all, when I say man-made, I'm talking literally, right? Because of the patriarchy. And then just to think that humans didn't want to exert their own control in order to sway the public opinion over thousands of years because it's a religion that's pure, that doesn't make any sense. If you look at almost every religion in the world, that especially in the day and age not too long ago, where religion pretty much ruled the state and the countries, that the power was so involved in religion that the ones that were at the head wanted to be able to manipulate the public in order to follow them more. When it came to King Henry VIII creating breaking away from the Catholic Church because of his reasons, right? Whether something beneficial came out of it later or not, his intent was in order to be able to do what he wanted to do. when it came to having to pay penance in order to basically go to God. But now we realize that it's more of a personal relationship with God rather than having to pay money to an institution in order to get to that level, right? So there are many truths in there. And if you look at it from a logical perspective and from a non-triggered perspective and a non-judgmental one, you can immediately pull from there what you think is the truth and what is probably been added by humans. And not only that, it's actually out there what has been added. You can even find out the years it was added. You can even look up King James Bible editions, years. It will give you the person who wrote it, when they wrote it, what they put in. Even the crucifixion story, there's like 2 verses in there that wasn't even there until like 1,000 years after it happened.
Oh,
right?
really?
Yeah.
Do you know which ones?
It's been so long since I researched it, but basically, there in the Council of Nicaea, there were multiple gospels. There was hundreds of gospels, and a lot of them were thrown out. And some of those cases, Jesus never even died. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I've looked at different things. And the way that I don't come from a Christian background. I mean, kind of, but I only knew Sunday school from the ages of 5 to 10. I went some Sundays. I didn't really learn anything. But then last year I was saved by Jesus after learning the astral realms, learning the chakra systems, all the other religions. I had demons chased out of me, and I was in this bliss that Jesus Christ saved my life. So it was strange for me, at that time, and I'm still trying to learn everything, obviously. But when I look back at, I learned, like I became psychic, and I learned all these different things, and I think he did die on the cross, but I have come across recently different groups that think he didn't die. But it's very interesting that everybody, all of the cultures, have a different perception of him, but that he was a real person, and that this story did happen the way, roughly the way that it's told in the Bible. Like you said, things have been added on and taken away from, but I do think that he died, but it's because of the resurrection that people see him after, and they're like, oh, well, he didn't die. He was just, they thought he was dead and took him off the cross too soon.
Right. The story of Constantine, that he basically made Christianity the number one religion in the whole of the Roman Empire. But there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he didn't even convert into Christianity until right before he died, where he basically was like, well, let me just make sure, just in case. Right. And it's like he wasn't even pure in his intent in why he did what he did.
It's because Jesus came to him in a vision, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when it comes to what you're saying in your story, I don't feel any deity or God or anything is the only way, but it's your way. You know what I mean? So you can have a personal relationship. So I think that's where a lot of people push back when you say that, when I say, or anybody else says that, well, no, maybe Jesus isn't the only way to God. It's almost like a direct offense to them, because that completely obliterates what they feel is the truth and reality. But I say that it doesn't need to mean that, because you can still have it as your way. Maybe it's just not the way for every single person on earth. Right. And there's been people that have said, Christian scholars that have said, well, if you're not aware of Jesus's name, then you're okay. Like if you're on an island somewhere and you've never even heard of Jesus, then it's okay. But then how does that make sense that as soon as I tell someone about it, you just expect them to change that moment? Well, what happened when people didn't? Well, we either killed them or forced them to convert. Is that okay as well?
Right. And I think Jesus is the creator, that he came down as, that was his carnation at that time. I think that there was that the creator created many creations that then created creations, and that Jesus is the one that created Adam and Eve, because the creations that were here prior to that were enslaving their creations. And he wanted to free them from that. But the only way he could do that is because of free will, was he created his own creation that would then mix, which is why Eve was purposely made in order to then procreate with the others, so that we would all have a mixture of the iron blood and the copper blood, the two different seeds, if you will. And that he could call back his creation and have everyone rise at the same time, which I think is happening now, that we're all just ascending essentially. And so I think that he came down at that time and was killed by his creation because he was showing these Pharisees that were teaching their own way, that they didn't want to see that
Yeah.
their people be freed, because that was the whole point of it, was to free the slaves from oppression, which is, it's still happening now. And there's a lot of different things that were happening, and why. But I do have this connection with Jesus, but I think that he is every way. I don't think he's the only. When we say the only way, I
Yeah.
think that no matter what way you do it, like you were just saying, no matter what name you know it, and
Yeah.
no matter what way you do, you are going through him. There is only
Right,
one
right.
way, and it's to be love, and to love everybody, like, or love the neighbor as thyself, and love thyself as thy God, or however it's worded. I know I just messed it up, and Christians will be on me for that, but that's really, that's why it's the only way. It's because it's every way.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, it just goes by many names,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why within the conscious spiritual community that's not part of organized religion at all, we're still using the term Christ consciousness in order to represent what's going on this planet right now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. And there's so many different cultures and civilizations all over the place, that there's uh, many different ways that people can be reached. For me, I was someone who went to prison. Like I said, I had addictions. I had a lot of mental disorders, anxiety, depression, OCD, those types of things. And I would not have stepped in a church. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
saved in that way. I wouldn't have gone to a mosque. I wouldn't have gone to a temple of any religion. So for me to be reached the way I was reached was through spirituality. Well, it was conspiracy theories, and spirituality is how I was reached. And that's how
Mhm.
the message was conveyed to me, which is different than someone who's brought up in any number of religion, and the message gets through to them as a child, and then they don't have to go through the terrible things that I went through in order to learn this. So
Yeah.
there's so many different options because we're a full spectrum of color, and
Exactly.
rather than, we're not a hive mind. And it bothers me when people want to force us into a box, into a hive mind. And even though their message may be like we're supposed to love everyone, they're not actually doing that. They're saying, no, you're bad, you're wrong, because they're so afraid, and God didn't give us the spirit of fear. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been coming across Proverbs 3:5 is really something I've been understanding more and more, is that we can't do this on our own understandings. We have to trust in our God. We have to give our faith to God, that, okay, God saved me this way. I know he can save someone else in their way. And if I'm wrong right now, I feel that he'll lead me to the right way. And if they're wrong right now, he'll lead them to the right way. I have faith that I don't have to do that. I don't have to spend my time making division, that I have to spend my time trying to find the similarities, and bringing unity to all of
Yeah.
us, and that God's going to bring us all together.
Yeah, I agree. There's we spend a lot of humanity spends so much time judging others for not doing what
Yeah.
they think they should be doing in order to basically set themselves up for a life they're not even in yet. You
Yeah.
know, like if I judge you, God, because you're not doing what I think you should do, I'm gonna have a better place in heaven. You know,
Yeah.
but if you look at the text in itself, it talks about loving thy neighbor. Literally, like the information is there. All the extra stuff, the judgment and everything, really came with the power and control.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what is your take on karma and the untouchables in Hinduism? Is
Yeah.
that something that you abide by, or what's your take on that part?
Yeah. So those are kind of, you mean like as how they relate together, or just as two separate things?
Well, yeah. Well, how they relate together, and what's your opinion on, if you knew of someone to be a quote unquote untouchable, would you just
Yeah.
walk by them and not help them, or?
No, I mean, I'm not like culturally Indian at all, even though my
Yeah.
family does all that cultural stuff, but my parents aren't like that either. My dad, like, for example, when we went to India once and we were at a family's house, and this lady, an untouchable lady, was cleaning the house, and then the daughter there. My dad flipped out because he completely is anti-child labor. He was like, and he like wanted to figure out how to pay for her college and get her out of it. And we're Brahmin, which is like the higher caste, so that doesn't really even exist right now, except for certain areas that are like that. But a lot of people that have left India don't even have that mentality. So when it comes to untouchables, let's first talk about how that even happened in the first place.
Right.
So there was a migration of an Aryan bloodline that came from the Eurasian steppes, which is current day North Russia. They came down to the Indus Valley civilization. And a little disclaimer out there, there's 4 different versions of this story. So if someone thinks that I'm saying the incorrect version, I'm just giving the general one, because there's an invasion version, there's a migration version, there's a version where it went the opposite way. So I'm just putting that disclaimer out there because it's really controversial, this migration story, because it goes with race and color of India. And a lot of people get extremely heated because they think that you're taking away their power by saying it in certain ways. So there was a migration that occurred. Some sort of mingling happened. There was currently a civilization that already existed in India, which we don't talk about too often, that predated 6000 BC. However, the Indus Valley civilization, which is in modern-day Pakistan, Afghanistan area, is known to be the cradle of civilization for India. So there was a migration that occurred, or some sort of mingling, where these lighter-skinned, probably like pretty much white or maybe a little cream complexion individuals started coming down into this area and mingling with the Indus Valley civilization, pushing them down south into India, but also merging with them and interbreeding with them. The whole of North India, in the middle of India, there's a mountain range. And a lot of those pure-blooded ones that stayed very dark and very brown and almost black even, were on the other side of South India, where the mountain range was, and a lot of the Aryan people that were coming from the Eurasian steppes didn't really go past that mountain range. So the ones in the south maintained their genetics over thousands of years longer because they had very little mingling with the Aryans that were coming in. And then the Aryans, spontaneously all over the place started interbreeding in North India, where I'm from, with the people that were there, making lighter skinned and darker skinned and all variations of skinned Indians. This is how the caste system began. The lighter you were, the whiter you were, the more you were able to basically focus on spirituality, them being royal families and all this stuff. The darker you were, the more likely you were going to be either a farmer, a landowner, or an untouchable. Wow. After a couple of thousand years, we get the system that we currently have now. However, it wasn't like bad or terrible until the British came in and solidified the caste system even more so on a hardcore level in order to do what the West does best: divide and conquer. That's how you get the current system. So it happened because of race and skin color and all that stuff, but it wasn't in any way where people were hardcore disrespected like that until the British came. Then the disrespect happened. Now, when it comes to karma, which is also, you can talk about it separately and together, that's the whole purpose of the fact that we incarnate where we're supposed to. And I don't think incarnating as an untouchable is because you have bad karma. I think life is about experiencing, and I've probably been all types of things, from a peasant to a king to whatever, Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of just my little take on it.
Okay, that's very interesting. I haven't heard it fully explained like that, so I really like that. And it seems like it was white supremacy happening. It happens everywhere. For whatever reason, it happens in Mexico right now, that all the leaders, they seem to be lighter skinned. And it even happens in the Black community today in America, where people who are lighter skinned, they feel that they're better than the darker skinned. Yeah. It's a very strange thing. And to me, I think that, the way that I understand it is, the story is that the fallen angels, they came down, and this was what was going on in the World's Fairs, that they were showing different size skulls and measured and said, look, these people are are down here, and the white people have the best skull, and it's up here, and it's always been white supremacy. And
Mhm.
it's not that, Mimi and I here are white supremacists, or that even our parents or anything, but it was that's how it began, that these fallen angels, I don't know that they were all white. I think that they made up the spectrum, but that these specific ones were white that came down, and they started telling everyone they were better than everybody else because they had abilities, because they came from a higher dimensional plane. Where do you think that these Aryans came from? Do you think that they were fallen angels essentially, or do you have any
Mm.
other idea?
Well, I think the fallen angels date back further than that. I think these were just basically Proto-European
Okay.
tribes, and so this is also the Greek. Let's do this. Let's do the Greek and India connection, and then move that into Pythagoras and back to Jesus,
All
because
right, sounds
that's
good.
that's a good route right there. All right, so basically, if you look at Indian gods, half of them are the same as the Greek gods. Indra is Zeus. Athena is Saraswati. Indra has a lightning bolt, king of gods. Athena, every single thing, even the backstory of Saraswati is the exact same, right?
Mm.
There's a good amount, tens of gods that are the exact same gods, but just different names. So the question is, how do they have the same gods, right? And first of all, if you look at the pantheon gods all over Europe, you see that they're very similar. But then when you look at the Indian gods, because of the Indian culture, people don't connect the dots that it's a part of the same pantheon of the white tribes of the European nation. So Indus Valley civilization existed. Hardly find any evidence of what happened there, right? It even looks like it could have been exploded in a nuclear fallout, because there's like glass sheets on the ground, right? Like flash heat. And we're trying to find out like what kind of spirituality they had and all this stuff. And we found one cow on like this icon, and we can't find anything else anywhere. So we're like, oh, maybe they were a cow cult. Then we see this one little structure of someone meditating like this. Only one out of this civilization that was bigger than Egypt, like 5 times bigger than the Egyptian Empire.
Wow.
Right. And then we're like, oh, is that Shiva? Maybe Shiva was there. Oh, well, then what were the gods that were already in India when they moved down? But then this migration occurred, and the Indus Valley civilization split up. They went which way? They went to the east, to the west, and the east, founding Anatolia tribes, eventually finding Minoan tribes, eventually becoming all of Greece. And then the other ones went the other way. They went into India, migrating and integrating with the common people over there. When they went down and they both migrated, what did they take with them? The gods that were brought there. The gods were the exact same gods. So the Greek gods had those gods that came down from the Eurasian steppes, that were from modern day North Russia, that were probably white to cream in complexion. And then some of either they went independently to the west and eventually became the Greek tribes and city-states, or some of the Indus Valley civilization went with them. And then the rest of them went down and migrated and intermingled with the natives of India, taking their gods with them. But India, we know for sure, had already had a bunch of gods there. So that's why we have all these Greek gods combined with like 100 other gods in India, creating modern day Hinduism.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the migration routes. And you comment on that, and then we can go back into Greece and Pythagoras a bit.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That some people think that the fallen means that it came from the north towards the south, and that's how they quote unquote fell. And St. Petersburg, Russia, could be the gates of St. Peter's, gates to heaven.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah, there's a lot of, if you've ever looked at St. Petersburg on like Google Earth or Google Maps, I suggest you look it up, because you see that it's the most beautiful structures there, and that used to be the capital of Russia back even in the 1800s. So that's what was the capital. I think it was in 1800 somewhere in there that it got switched to Moscow. But it's a very interesting concept that maybe this realm that we're in, it's like some kind of spiral going upwards, and that it was cut off for whatever reason, and now there's the quote unquote ice wall that goes around. I don't know about that part, but it's just very interesting that you're saying that these cream colored or white cream colored beings came from North Russia. So that's just very interesting.
Yeah, and I don't to think about it, like I don't doubt that it could have been direct fallen angels at that time. You know,
Yeah. Do you know how long ago that was, or
yeah,
approximate?
6,000 BC.
Okay. Yeah, that's when Enoch, his father, Jared, that's when he was around, and that's when it said the fallen angels came down themselves.
Yeah, so it's 6,000 BC was when this civilization started, and if this was the case, and we're going with the fallen angels, definitely they would probably be up in that area at that time, and then around 2,000 years later, they migrated down, and around 4,000 BC, we start seeing the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization and the spreading out.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting. And that collapse, that was in Moses' time, right? And the 4,000 BC was when he led out of the Exodus.
Yeah, which is interesting because Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley civilization literally form a triangle right there. Boom.
Wow.
Egypt across across the Dead Sea, I think it is, through Yemen into Afghanistan, Indus Valley civilization, and then Mesopotamia right there. Literally the three largest empires and most prosperous and full of information that literally seeded almost every religion in the world. Well, all three right there. But the interesting thing was Mesopotamia and Egypt had a hierarchy. There is no evidence in the Indus Valley civilization. It's like 3 to 5 times bigger than all of them. No evidence of hierarchy. No evidence of having to pay some sort of authority figure. They're trying to figure it out, but it looks like it was like a civilization based on equality, and they had implemented some sort of fifth dimensional existence, and then the migration happened. Yeah.
Well, are they maybe the Tuscans? Are you familiar with the or not the Tuscans, the Etruscans that just popped up, and where Rome kind of took a lot of their stuff from these people who they said that they just appeared out of nowhere and that they didn't have a hierarchy. It was men and women were equal, and then Rome just conquered them and stole all their stuff.
Well, but Rome wasn't for another 4,000 years.
Okay. After
that, So, but I'd be interested in who that is, and that's happened multiple times, I think, because if you look at the Kushan civilization that existed thousands of years later after Rome actually came into existence, that actually was in the same area as the Indus Valley civilization. It's called the Kushan civilization because the area that the Indus Valley civilization is in is where Hindu Kush is, the Hindu Kush Valley, which is actually where the first cannabis plant was cultivated, which is where the word Hindu Kush comes from, because it was cannabis that was found there. So that civilization was the only one on the planet at that time that had complete equality. Romans, Greeks, Buddhists, Hindus, everybody was allowed to be in that empire at the same time and walk around freely without being persecuted.
Wow, very interesting. So do you want to go into the Pythagoras and Jesus?
Yes. So I spent the last 6 months doing a lot of research on Pythagoras, and I just did a presentation for a few hundred people on it a couple of weeks ago called The Truth, the Life, and Times of Pythagoras, in which my mind was completely blown. First of all, I'll say a couple of things before I go into the Jesus stuff. Pythagoras knew that he was incarnated on Earth at least 4 other times. He knew what his incarnations were, and he knew details about it. He was one of the first vegetarians in Greece. He believed that through mathematics and harmonics, you can find through mathematics and music, you can find God. That mathematics and music was God, and God was a harmony that we need to cultivate within us. And through understanding numbers and numerology, and his numerology literally became the numerology in the Bible, right? I have 3 slides on all of the numerology that he came up with that is the biblical numerology. It was also taken by the Masons, the 33 degrees, and all that stuff is all his information. So as I was doing this presentation, I was reading about his life, and I was just like, wait a second, this just sounds too much like Jesus. And then I started looking up if anybody had ever done anything on, Pythagoras and Jesus's similarities. And I literally found a post from 420 Atheists on Facebook from 2005 or something, saying like just with 3 things about the similarities. I'm like, wow, no one's really gone deep into it. So I decided to spend a day just trying to figure out all of them, and I'm going to go through them right here, right now. Some of them anyway. Okay, and I say so. Yeshua, right? Pythagoras' life and the life of Jesus have too many coincidences not to be mentioned. Both were known as the Son of God or the Sun God himself, the God himself incarnated. Both had followers that were like apostles that went to spread their knowledge around. The acoustematikoi and the mathematikoi were the 2 orders of the Pythagoreans. The acoustematikoi were the ones that followed the aesthetic lifestyle. The aesthetic lifestyle meaning no sex, no bad thoughts, in meditation all the time, worshiping, spiritual life, and the mathematikoi that were allowed to give them the secrets of what God is through the numerology and through the harmonics that he'd cultivated. Both of them were the precursors to the clergy and the secret order of the Freemasons that became literally utilizing, some say Luciferian, but utilizing Christianity for their own benefits. The Rosicrucians directly come from the mathematikoi, and the Knights Templar as well.
Wow.
So his 2 orders were literally the precursors to all the orders of this clergy and the segmentation that happened within Christianity. They both never claimed to produce all the awareness themselves, right? Instead, they actually, both of them never wrote anything down themselves. Instead, their followers attested and began worshiping them after their deaths. So they're both even known to not only wrote anything down themselves, but they never even really said, this is my info, this is my info, this is my info, right? They gave it and said, even Pythagoras, I got this from source. I got this from my plant medicine ceremony. I got this from ancient Egypt. These are his words, right? And Jesus, the same thing, like that this is coming from divine revelation. And then we can also track back his history in India and things like that. But his followers loved him so much that they just completely neglected all of the evidence of where they got the information from and just solely started worshiping them. Both taught about reincarnation. Book of Reincarnation and the Resurrection of Christ are the 2 things that I referenced there. Both never wrote anything down themselves. Their apostles did the writing. Both were known to walk on water and bilocate, being 2 places at the same time. Both of their information was utilized and adopted by the elite. They were both anti-elitism and believed in equality. So Pythagoras is known repeatedly. It's so interesting because I don't even like to say Masons or Illuminati anymore because I don't even know the names anymore or what really is going on. There's some sort of order, but they took and they worshiped Pythagoras because due to his information, they were able to build and construct society in their own image through Rome and beyond. So, however, it's been quoted so many times. Pythagoras was anti-elitism beyond anything. Jesus, he threw out the moneylenders for a reason, So they were so Pythagoras was so anti-elitism that he was trying to persuade people in Italy, right? He was trying to persuade people in Italy and the kings and the authoritarians there on being vegetarian and doing different things and adopting certain lifestyle so that they could stop being so aggressive. He would even say that just if you start killing animals just freely like this, what's going to stop you from killing your brother, right? And then we have Parthenisis, which is Pythagoras' mother, which means young woman or virgin. Okay, much evidence to suggest that Parthenis had a virgin birth. It was common in Greek in those days to believe the gods would interbreed with humans. So when we have the virgin birth from Jesus, it wasn't an uncommon thing because in the pagan world, in Greece and Italy, it was common as anything because the gods would always come down and have a kid with. It was throughout all of their mythology. It was a continuation of that. And even in Greece, there was an order of priestesses that existed that practiced rituals in Greece specifically for virgin births, right? And his mother was a part of it. They had rituals and policies around what was considered a virgin, and your body could be, and there was also a way to restore a body to its virgin state. So that's just a little bit of information there on, there were some things that I had in my mind as well as going to share. It'll probably come up as you're talking right now, but that's just some of, the connections.
Yeah, it's very interesting. That I mean, I never heard of Pythagoras being mentioned. There's a class of I don't want to say class, but there's many Osiris, Buddha. There's so many different people that are mentioned with Jesus. I've never heard Pythagoras, so that is
Yeah.
very interesting to me.
Well, actually, I remember what I was going to tell you now. Let me just add
Go
this
ahead.
to it. So Pythagoras was born in Greece, and then he actually, as soon as he was born, he went all over the known world. And his first religion that he was actually raised in was Zoroastrianism, because his dad was a merchant, and his dad would take him around the world. So he even lived in Egypt for 20 years. Then when he came back to his island in Greece, an authority figure, a tyrant, had taken over the land. So he moved to Italy, to Croton, Italy. So all of this information was actually dispersed through Italy more than it was in Greece. And then a couple of hundred years later, we get the Roman Catholic Church coming about in a country in which all of Pythagoras' views was predominant and almost solely cultivated in the whole area. So on top of everything that I said right there, it makes perfect sense, because his views had permeating the whole of Italy, and the Roman Empire was not only using his information because he literally lived there until his dying breath, but his acousmatikoi and his mathematikoi were the predominant orders within Italy as well, as the Vatican Church was being created.
Oh, and that brings up the cymatics and how the cathedral type of deal, the windows. If you were to remove the stained glass windows, and wind was to come through, it would maybe be a healing center, which goes into what you're talking about right here.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, wow, that is some great information that you have given us. So before we leave out, I do want to ask, because some people, when they see all of these different characters having a lot of different characteristics, they say, oh, none of the stories were true, they're all metaphor, none of them, they're all about you. Where do you give credit to that each of these were actual beings that were actually experiencing these different things and had these different characteristics, and that it's also metaphorical for ourselves, possibly? Or do you take a hard stance on it only being metaphor or only being literal?
Yeah, so I've gone back and forth over the last 21 years. I went through 100% not believing that Jesus existed to the opposite of that. And now, yeah, I'm somewhere in between. I honestly feel that they all existed. Okay. Like, I think that right now, just by like checking my ego to the side and tuning into the energy, knowing everything I know and still thinking that it actually happened, because I could have convinced myself that it didn't with all this information.
Right.
But I do think that a lot of stories were shared, right, and passed along, and a lot of things were added, so we don't have complete clarity of what happened where. But then also, it seems like there is a cosmic recipe, if you will, that keeps happening in a certain way. And maybe that has something to do with bringing in specific avatars, when it comes to virgin births, when it comes to certain types of upbringings and things like that. But yeah, just to get back to it, it's definitely a metaphor, because all of these beings are teaching us how to be like them,
Right.
how to live like them. And it happened multiple times. Just to say it happened one time for just one group of people wouldn't make any sense. It's definitely happening all the time. And it's probably going to happen in the next few thousand years again, as we're evolving in consciousness. A lot of the information that came out from these beings, it seems that humanity wasn't ready to fully process, but the reason why, I think, because if you look at history, you'll see every 2,000 years, the change of every zodiac, a new religion pops up on the planet. Even when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, was he, I don't think he actually killed those people down there. I think that was human-made stuff. What happened is they were worshiping, because you know how, like, basically he created an earthquake and all that, and was really upset because everybody was still worshiping the old gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
His followers. What happens is every 2,000 years, a zodiac changes in the sky. When the zodiac shifts, a new religion emerges. that was the end of one of the zodiacs and the beginning of a new one. He had gone and got the new covenant for the new age, and he brought it down to his people. But they were still worshiping the bull, the old zodiac. So you one thing, you can't judge them for doing something they've been doing for 2,000 years, right? And especially when it just occurred. So the destruction and stuff, I think, didn't happen because the judgment from that wouldn't make sense from a divine being. However, every 2,000 years, a new religion emerges on the planet that eventually becomes the number one religion. The last one was Christianity. And the reason why it was literally the last one before the next evolution, which is the unity consciousness, is because it's really important in our evolution. Understanding the truths of Christ and what it represented and what it meant for this world and deciphering all that information, I think is extremely important for the days and the years to come. So I would in no way say that I'm disrespecting Christianity. I feel that it holds an incredibly beautiful place. It just is a shame that it's been utilized in such a disharmonic way. And now we're getting to an age where we can start understanding the truth. And we've done I've done a 2-day, 10-hour day conference called The Truth of the Bible, right? And if the whole world looked at that thing, we could and all accepted that kind of information, we could actually utilize Christ consciousness and the Christian message in a positive way for everybody, So it's not like it's too late, it's too far gone, this religion is harmful for people. It's nothing like that. It's more like we just need to really look at it from a lens of unity rather than division, and then move forward from there.
There we go. That's greatly said. I do have one more question. Since you are such a wealth of knowledge, I would just want to ask that if you've ever come across the phenomena where the alien abduction phenomena, or also the sleep paralysis, when people use the name of Jesus Christ, then it stops or it'll go away. I've actually had this experience. I was abducted my entire life until I was saved by Christ, and then when I explained earlier, what happened to me last year, and then I was no longer abducted, and I don't know why that is or what is with that. Have you ever come across anybody or other names being used to be able to stop this phenomena?
Yeah, well, I would say it's twofold. That the energy of the Christ definitely holds its own energy, and then also your belief in certain thing also does it as well. How much you're like, you believe something so much that nothing can even penetrate that vibration, right?
Okay.
And so I've heard people use, are you when I first got into this awareness, and I wasn't even into religion at this point, people were telling me if you see a ET and the ET maybe has negative intentions for you and you don't know, you ask, are you of the Christ consciousness? And it's literally a law of the universe. It needs to respond. Okay. Because this planet is the energy of the Christ consciousness, right? And the Sophianic energy, the Christ consciousness, the divine masculine, the Sophianic is the divine feminine. They're actually both resurrecting right now. And so the other thing that I've heard people say is, are you of the light? Just as plain as that, invoking the light in themselves. But I have heard many people say the same thing that you said, where they and some of them actually have become very fundamental Christians because they utilize that, and then that was kind of their answer to that must be the only way, because you answered for me,
Their proof.
I've heard a lot of different people who practice different religions that when this is happening to them, no other name stopped it except for Christ. And I even talked to someone not long ago who said that they were saying, God, please make this stop. God, please make this stop. And the one thing that came to them was call Jesus' name. And when he did, so maybe Jesus is the protector of us. I don't really know. I just know that it worked for me. So since you have so much information, I mean, this was such a great wealth of knowledge. I figured you'd have some information into that aspect as well.
Yeah. I mean, like if you're an Indian, you don't know English, right? Jesus won't even come to your head. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what do they say?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that I guess we'll find out eventually, maybe, that when we all ascend, that maybe we'll find out some of these questions that we can't really get answers to, but we can only speculate on.
Yeah, and that's why I like the Rig Veda, my number one quote that I love so much. There are many pathways to the same destination. Same way I started it off, and each pathway can be as relevant. It just really means it is how much belief you have in that path, and that can be your liberation.
Yeah, and the Bhagavad Gita, I say it all the time. I actually have a copy down there behind me. Is that really helped me understand when Arjun is talking to Krishna and he's saying, no matter what, you can't do someone else's job for them. No matter how good you are at doing their job, you can't do it for them. And I think that goes hand in hand with what you were just saying, that there's many ways you can't force someone to be like you. You can't live their life for them. They all have to go through it themselves.
Right. I think we all find our own truths through our own experiences, and sometimes you can't force your truth on someone else because it may not actually be their truth, but we're all headed the same direction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the way I like to end my discussions is I like to ask my guest, what is your number one go-to grounding technique of how to stay human? With all this information and possibilities out there, how do you stay centered?
So I use chanting, and there's a few different types of chanting. Definitely 3 breaths out first, and sometimes I just do 3 ohms. Right, I'm gonna give you 3 different ways from the least effective for me to the most effective. So the ohms, just like in the moment with a group of people going somewhere. Hey guys, do you want to do 3 ohms together? And then there's the seed sounds, the chakra seed sounds. Every chakra has this own sound. Okay. Ram, Lam, whatever, 3 times each, every single one of them, breathing in and breathing out. Okay. So, but then I like the last one, and the last one I like the most because it's universal. And I teach full on like 10-hour courses, 3-day events on sound chanting and frequency science. And we go over this stuff. And the last one I like the most because I love to give people something that's non-dogmatic. And even though Om is technically the sound of the universe, and chakra seed sounds are universal sounds that came before religion, organized religion, a lot of people that might be of another religion might be like, well, I don't really resonate with that. So what I say is do the vowels, chant the vowels. A, E, I, O, U, 3 times each. Full breaths, chant them, because the vowels weren't even implemented into written language, until 2,000 years after we even had language.
Yeah, I actually think that's what God's name is A-E-I-O-U. If you were to, it would be pronounced something like Yahuwah, something to that way, and they couldn't write down the vowels because it was so sacred, so they just wrote down the consonants.
So that's a whole other freaking podcast right there,
Wow.
So A-E-I-O-U, like for example, Egypt's ancient name Kemet, it actually wasn't Kemet, it was Kmt, KMT. The E's were added 2,000 years later. And the vowels were added because we were devolving in consciousness, and the vowel sounds activated your soul and your connection to the divine. So we did not need it when we were already activated. But as we devolved, humans were like, oh, let's add these things in there so we can keep ourselves at that level of consciousness. So when you do those 3 times each, A-E-I-O-U, full breaths, and then this is what I love doing. You do one of them 3 times, and then you just sit with it, and you just register in your mind where the frequency vibrated. Then you do the next one, the next one, next one, and then you can good to go. Do whatever you need to do after that.
Wow. That is, you have some great information here, Neil. You are very studied. Where can the people find you?
Sure. Yeah. You can find me at PortalToAscension.org. Sign up there. I've curated over 10,000 hours of presentations with definitely over 3,000 speakers. And on my website, if you sign up, you sign up on the homepage, you actually get 3,000 hours of free presentations. It's like Netflix for consciousness. And when you sign up, you'll get a username and password. You can log in, check it out. And then also our upcoming events. We have one on ancient Sumerian Mesopotamia, a 10-hour event coming up in a couple of weeks, actually. And then the last thing is I'm trying to grow my YouTube right now. We have like 45,000 on there. But so go to youtube.com/PortalToAscension. Every single day of the week, we have something going out there, because with all of our archives, we're actually, especially because of what's been going on the last couple of years, we've kind of pulled out all the stops. It's just like nonstop awareness now. So every day we got like 2 to 3 hours of presentations being streamed live on our YouTube.
All right, everybody, I really suggest you go check out all that stuff, because like I said in the beginning, Neil was Portal to Ascension was one of those things that I first got linked up with in conjunction with Edge of Wonder. So it was like I had those two great things going on right away, and it really helped me get to understand everything I understand. So I want to thank you so much for coming on, Neil. This was a great conversation.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
we'll